Hello, everyone. I'm Keith DeStone, and I'm here, as always, with Greg Nagy and Sarah and Janet and Elen for office hours for v15 of HeroesX. And today's discussion will be about what's happening on the discussion board for hours 14 and 15 in response to, Greg, your questions. The first of those questions is as follows. After reading Philostratus on the Garden of Protesilaus, have your views changed about the Garden of Laertes in Odyssey 24? Let's see. So what are folks saying about this one?
Well, one participant has a direct question for Greg, and I'm reading his question. I was wondering whether Professor Nagy had any further thoughts or may have any further comments about the role of Antikleia in Laertes' decision to seclude himself in his garden and assume the role of an imperlogos.
Ooh, how clever. What a clever takeaway from the story as told by Philostratus. Ampelurgos, meaning the person who works in the vineyard, is this generic reference to whoever it is who's the keeper of the sacred grounds of the cult hero Protesilaus. And I remember how I was not happy with such archaizing translations as vine dresser. And so maybe it's because I was so struggling with how to translate that word that I didn't see the essence which this participant sees. And that is, it's precisely what Laertes is, an ampelurgos. That's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's funny when I formulated that question, has reading Philostratus changed your mind or affected your thinking in any way about Odyssey 24? I was thinking, I hate to say it, primarily about myself. It has changed my thinking, but this participant has made my thinking change even more. So thank you. Wow.
There's a comment about the name of Odysseus when he introduces himself to Laertes for the first time. Eperitos, he calls him Eperitos. And this participant asking, can we make a connection between the name he introduces himself and his name?
Yes, I think we can. And in fact, I once ran a seminar where a very clever classicist actually made a connection, but I'm going to have to look it up. It's in a book called, I think it's called 9 Essays on Homer or something. And I remember it was a seminar attended by some wonderful people whose writings I think you, my dear colleagues, actually know. And I bet we can find it online. And I would rather make a placeholder. And dear Keith, maybe you can lead the charge in helping us track down this article instead of my trying to reconstruct something that I don't remember well enough. But I think there is a connectivity. And I think this classicist, whose name I can't remember at the moment.
Actually, I see that Elen has gotten her own copy off of the shelf. And so maybe she can tell us the name of this person.
Good. So even as we continue our conversation, Elen may rescue us. But I think it's very important in such dialogues just to admit where forgetting has happened. And apologies in advance to the very clever, as I described this person. I should have said a very perceptive person who made the connection, which convinced me at the time.
Mm-hmm. Which is the article? Do you remember from that book? Which of the essays?
That's the problem. I don't. I don't.
Okay. Well, Ellen, if there's an index, perhaps you can track it down. But otherwise, we'll come back to that
Okay.
in the future.
Yes. Yes.
This will be just a placeholder, as you
Yes.
said.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Well, let's go on to the next question for now.
Yeah. Another participant has been drawing a connection between the longing that Laertes feels for Odysseus, and the future worshippers of Odysseus as a cult hero would have that longing. And then there's also that sense of rejuvenation that happens. It's like an initiation. So it seems to work both ways, that it's as if Odysseus is coming in for an initiation himself, but then also Laertes is being initiated. Would that be what's happening?
I think it's a whole festival of rejuvenation. Yes, yes. But it's so beautiful that it happens in a garden. That the garden is the place where fond hopes for recovering youth and vitality come together, and how appropriate, isn't it, that in a song culture that is so, excuse my playing with words, rooted in the dynamism of plant growth, that the feelings of rejuvenation and happiness are concentrated in such places. And I always love to say that the garden of Laertes can be envisioned as an orchard, as a vineyard, any variation on the theme of exuberant vegetal self-expression, shall we say. And I think it's in that spirit that that I was asking the question that I was asking. And I think, once again, we see a beautiful reaction by one of our participants. I must say that, what are we, version 15 or v15, as he calls it?
The 15th iteration,
is the home of very, very, very perceptive participants. I am just thrilled at some of these comments, even if sometimes they stump me.
Ellen, you were looking in that book. I saw that you put something in the chat. Do you think you found the essay? You're suggesting the author is Brian Breed, Odysseus.
Yes.
Back home and back from the dead.
Yeah, well, he's, oh my God. Do you mind if I tell a quick story about Brian?
Sure.
He's a lovely classicist, and please, Brian, forgive me for my lapse. But can I tell you a wonderful story about Brian? His one true love, called Wendy, had to go to Korea for something like a year or 2 years or something like that, and so, as a sign of her love, I think weekly, she sent to Brian in Massachusetts an origami crane, little cranes. And then when finally she came back to the States and Brian and Wendy got married, he's a wonderful classics professor. There was a celebration party, and I remember there was this big salad bowl, big wooden salad bowl, full of popcorn, I thought. And I remember I kind of reached in and realized it was a collection of origami sendings from Wendy to Brian. So I was visiting Brian in Western Massachusetts. He had invited me for a talk. And I told him this story, and he said that he and Wendy had to move from one place to another at one point, and all the origami disappeared, but at least I never ate any of it. And the symbolism of cranes returning. Oh, Brian is a genius classicist. And Brian, out there, will you forgive me that I had my mental lapse? But it's even more fun to recover my just happy memory of Brian attending that seminar whenever it was. And somebody else who attended that seminar was the late Emily Vermeulen. It was such an honor for me that Emily came to that seminar, and sometimes Charles Siegel would drop in. What happy times come back to me, great memories, and all centered in the garden of Laertes. Not bad, not bad.
Greg, your mention of this story, this beautiful story, reminds me of an element in the first participant's comment that we didn't get to about the role of Antikleia and her relationship with Laertes
Yes. Oh my
and the
God.
garden, compared to
Yes.
Protesilaus and
oh gosh,
my mind is failing me as well right now, but his
no. This is dear Keith. That's a very important, shall we say, dot to connect in our exercise in connecting the dots. I'll just leave it at this for now, which is Antikleia is not against Kleos. It has to do with compensation for Kleos or substitution for Kleos. So she has a very interesting name, a speaking name, Antikleia. And it's interesting that there's also, shall we say, the polarity of what we translate as nurse and mother. You see what I'm saying? So you have Eurykleia and Antikleia. And then you ask yourself, well, who's the real mother? So Odysseus has two old ladies very much in his life as he looks back at his earlier years. And the fact that his mother died of a broken heart, the fact that that is what is said in our Odyssey. Why? Because it was falsely reported to her that her son had died, makes the relationship between the mother and the nurse even more interesting. There's a lot to be explored there. And who knows, maybe one of our participants may want to delve into this very interesting convergence of names, Eurykleia and Antikleia. Eurykleia would mean she who has kleos that spreads far and wide. And Antikleia it's like saying a compensatory kleos, or a kleos that makes up for something else, which could be another kleos. So there is some kind of poetics of substitution going on here. The Homeric Odyssey is so complex. It's one of the things that's so beautiful about this masterpiece of verbal art. I estimate it took about a millennium to reach the beautiful jewel-like state of the art that it has reached when it's written down in the form that we read. Oh my goodness.
And I can fill in Laodamia. That's the name of the lover of Protesilaus. The name that I forgot.
About, I didn't even catch that. Laodamia. I thought you were talking about the mother of Odysseus and the nurse.
Oh no, you're right. But in comparison, I was mentioning Protesilaus, and I couldn't think of the name of Laodamia at first.
Laodamia. Oh God.
In comparison, I suppose, with Antikleia and Laertes.
Yes.
In the garden.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the Damea of Laodamia gives me pause. So that could be another chapter in our explorations together.
Yes, many chapters yet to come.
I look
many
forward
tangents that we could
Well, let's not
road's
say,
not taken.
let's not say tangents. It's dots to connect.
Well, what does tangent mean?
Well, you're right. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I stand not corrected, but chastised.
Far be it from me. Well, let's talk about the hour 15 discussion here. The question there is, do you think that Pausanias was emotionally transformed by the experience of being initiated into the hero cult of Trophonius? Whether you answer yes or no, either way, how would you describe his response to his experience?
Oh.
What are folks saying about this?
Well, one participant indeed thinks that Pausanias was transformed, but he's wondering, do we have other sources about initiation, or is there more in Pausanias about it?
Un moment. Okay, so la fin des mots d'un Pausanias à l'autre. So how shall we translate it? The termination of bad things that happen from one Pausanias to another. And this is a wonderful friend called Pierre Ellinger. And it's about two Pausaniases. One of them, the king of Sparta, who has a very strange life story. But let's not talk about the king of Sparta. Let's talk about our Pausanias, who lives over half a millennium later, and who is the author of this amazing reportage about his travels. And look, what Pausanias means is he who is connected with the end of troubles, bad things that happen. And what a name. You could imagine that maybe Pausanias's mother, let's just talk about the 2nd century CE Pausanias, had trouble with childbirth, and his praying is, may the pain, especially during transition, stop. And then when the relief happens, the beloved baby is called Pausanias. There are reasons for thinking that that's why people are called names like that. But in the case of Pausanias, he actually makes reference in his own travels to his own feelings. And he's very reserved, of course, but his own feelings about what kind of connections he makes to the sacred in all its amazing varieties as he travels from one Greek-speaking place to another in the course of the write-up, which comes down to us in 10 scrolls, sometimes called books. I'm allergic to call them books, but anyway. So I now see, after rereading Pierre, my friend, that that all of us could do a lot of further rethinking about the, how shall I call it, the mental and emotional state of Pausanias, reserved though he is, about the contacts he makes with all of these different variations on the theme of sacred. And that includes the sacredness of heroes, the sacredness of gods, the sacredness of the places that they inhabit, and just the sacredness of the very idea of local color, may I put it that way. And it all has to do with sometimes feelings of relief. You feel relieved of all the bad things that may plague your mind and your body, whatever. So there's a lot there. There's a lot there, and I love the way our participant is going down that path, because it is a kind of traveling on a mental path. and as we accompany Pausanias in his travels.
In his travels, traveling, going into the cave, maybe we can say that's a traveling, yes. And that's a special language he uses. Do we see this special language in other cult heroes?
Well,
the explanation of other cult heroes.
You know, the problem is, dear Janet, that by the time of Pausanias, I think a lot of the local hero cults had, shall we say, faded away. I almost wish I could use a vegetal metaphor here. And Trophonius is one of the few cult heroes that still has a cult that's going strong, but I have a sense that a lot of the local color had already faded. And just the way Pausanias talks about, well, there's this and there's this. There are not that many lively hero cults anymore. Pausanias has sometimes to dig hard and dig deep. And even in Herodotus, even this very sensitive person who is recording so many different things that are of cultural interest to us in the 5th century, as I said earlier, over half a millennium earlier, sometimes has trouble, shall we say, locating the local color of cult heroes. So going back to our participants' question, to my mind, that narrative of Pausanias about his own personal experiences, sometimes very subjective, it seems, experiences in being initiated into the hero cult of Trophonius, that's almost unique. I would have said that more, shall we say, firmly earlier, that it's almost the only thing. I'll just say now it's almost unique. I really can't find anything that matches the intensity of that write-up anywhere else.
So thinking, as it were, back to Iliad and in particular Odyssey, as we've been doing, the language there, and you've talked about how this language is not explicit and it's not tied to its very specific cults because there were different localized versions of it. But some of that similar sort of language is used about. There's caves, there's literal descent into Hades that Odysseus does. There's consulting, Tiresias in his case, but other cases, and that language is similar. So this is some sort of reference to the cult, not only of Odysseus, but perhaps of some of these other heroes.
Yes, absolutely. So in a way, it's connecting with a whole range of local color, of local experiences that may not be there anymore. And in a sense, the nostalgia that is felt by a Phoenician who's not even a Greek, but wow, he speaks pretty good Greek, doesn't he? So here's a non-Hellene who is in love with Homeric poetry, but in a sense, the vitality of the heroes in Homeric poetry isn't there anymore because there is no more oral tradition. So he's just a reader like you and me. And yet he then finds a living hero cult. And wow, that is like a reestablishment of connectivity. And it's almost as if the practice of hero cult, even though it's evanescent, is a way of recharging the battery of Homeric poetry, where the aspect of hero cults that is there, alive and well in Homeric poetry, and I spent my whole adult life practically studying that vitality comes to life in the dimension not of poetry, but of the way pious people still venerate heroes. in an era that's so pervaded already by Christianity that devotees of hero cult have to say all sorts of competitive things about Jesus, because Christians are also inspired by the idea of resurrection. Well, in that case, our hero, Protesilaus, has to have a double resurrection, and we have to have even more intensification of the mysteries that challenge our mind when we contemplate the miracle of resurrection. It's just amazing. I am obviously very much changed by way of forcing myself to think of heroes the way Pausanias had to think of heroes in the 2nd century CE, and in the way Philostratus, who's really nearing the 3rd century CE, has to think about them. And even the way I talk about it, sometimes I merge Pausanias and Philostratus. Have I done it, dear friends, in my riff just now? Maybe I did, but to me they're very similar, because they're both of them in a world where hero cults are on the way out. And if I had to re-edit, dear Keith, if I had to re-edit myself and sort out the probability that I've mixed Pausanias and Philostratus together in my riff just now, I don't regret it. It's really a very comparable world that they live in, even though they're separated by maybe half a century. And again, I'm talking about Pausanias in the earlier phases of what we call the 2nd century CE, and Philostratus, who's really pushing into the 3rd century CE.
Well, we'll put a pause to our conversation now, but we'll resurrect it in a week.
My goodness, you said pause, which is the first part of Pausanias. That is etymologically
not a coincidence. You got me thinking about pauses. So.
Yes, pauses can result in continuations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So join us again next week for more fun, everyone. See you then.
See you then.